Okay, I'm going to go over a very important part of the body today, and I'm titling this The Ark of Truth or The Ark of Deception. And within our body, we contain the entire story of the universe in a biblical term and in a universal way. From the macrocosm to the microcosm, we are the center point of the universe. And everything that happens outside of us is a reflection of what's happening inside of us. And to me, this is remarkable. This is what I've spent most of my awake life studying and really getting into. And I love the aspect of how the body reflects consciousness. That's all it is. The body, the physical world, is showing us what is happening on the conscious level, individually and collectively. And as I understand the body more and more and the union between metaphysical and physical, I begin to understand that all we need to really focus on is ourselves. It's an inward journey, and most of what happens outside of us is a distraction. The outside is meant to direct us inward to see where our misalignment is, and we tend to keep focused on the outside world and get focused on what's wrong with the government, with everything else. And as long as we stay focused on that from an external view, looking at what's wrong out in the world, we will never solve the problem, because peace will never show up in the world until we become peaceful beings within ourselves. And the important part of the brain I'm going to be going over today is actually a part of your body that is in reality the real Ark of the Covenant. It's not a simile, it is actual, it is factual that this is the Ark of the Covenant. Also within the body is the Holy Grail. The devil is in your brain, Ganesh is in your head. It's all within us, every single thing. So it's really fascinating to me. So without any further ado, we're going to go ahead and go forward and cover some of this today. So, you are an infinitely powerful being of the universe. And universe, if you look at that word, it could be uni as in one song, one unified song, and you are a very intricate part of that. Just like your body, your physical body is one being, but also there are trillions of individual cells. We are a reflection of the same thing that happens with God. You know, the old view, the religious view, is that God is outside of us. We were expelled from God, and we have to kiss God's butt to get back in to heaven or into that good graces with God. But in actuality, we are an inward division, meaning that we are all inside of God. If God is truly omnipresent, then it is everywhere, and it is in everything, from the most small quark to the largest galaxy. God is in everything, and we are in God. So, within you, the microcosm, lives the fractal reflection of the universe, the microcosm. The same patterns are used from the largest scale to the smallest. Any object is midpoint. You are the midpoint of the microcosm universe inside of you and the microcosm universe within you. It literally goes in as far as it does out. And I mean that literally, because inside of you, just think from a small atom's perception within your body. You have light, you have photons within your body. So imagine being inside of your body, and there's light, and there's cells, and there's organizations, like a liver could be its own little galaxy or universe. It's just amazing about how, from that perspective, inside of us is just as large as what's outside. We are the midpoint. Within you is everything. I mean, absolutely everything. And the more I understand this, the less searching I do, because my searching has come to an end, because I get the whole thing. I really do. And it's simple once you start seeing it from a certain perspective. And the cool thing about technology, like with what I'm sharing here, I can show you visuals and give you information that doesn't have to be cryptic anymore. I mean, the sages of the old had to use cryptic information because some people didn't know what they were talking about. So all this translation that's happened over the thousands of years has lost the truth. It's like that little story where you set a group of people in a circle and one person tells a story to the next person, whispers in their ear, and on and on and on. By the time that it gets to the end, it's not quite the same story. And that's happening to us. So we are reclaiming our truth, and that's the age that we are in. We are in the reawakening age. Reawakening means that We were once awake ourselves. You know, we are the fallen ones that you hear about. We have fallen in our vibration. So, moment to moment, day to day, and year to year, you play out the story of the universe from the Big Bang on. So inside of you, there's genesis happening with new cells and explosions and all these things happening within your body, but that Big Bang never stopped. It's a continual process. In you are the major stories and landmarks in all spiritual texts. And that's literal. And I like looking at the word spiritual here because if you look at the word spiritual and you break it down, it's you in the middle of the spiral. And the spiral is the shape of the galaxy, the universe, everything. So once you start waking up to the fact that it is you and only you in the center of this, and we're all part of the same thing, then that's when your spiritual awakening and your spiritual way of being is supposed to be actuated. When you start actually living and being it. A lot of us New Age people get into reading all this stuff but never really living it. And it's time to embody what we know in our minds or what we've been hearing all this time. It's time to get with it. This clip here is pretty cool. It's all in your head. The top picture here you see is Michelangelo's creation of man. You see God reaching out to Adam. It looks pretty innocent on one level, but when you start looking, you can see by this lower picture here, this is amazing to me, that it is the exact shape of the brain. Here, this veil that's God in is represents God is inside your head. Another representation we're going to be going over in a second. So God is inside your head, and it's reaching out to Adam, the physical world, yourself. So really this is a loop, you reaching out to yourself. And you can see down here with this picture, when you outline his God's cape and the angels and cherubs that are around him, it's the exact shape of a brain. I won't get into it because of the time period here, but all these are landmarks too, from the pituitary to other aspects, the brain column, it's all in here. And you know, Michelangelo is said to be as part of secret sects. And the secret sect people would have information, and it was always put in plain sight, but unless you knew the keys to unlock it, it was always hidden. So they could be saying the truth right in front of you, and you would never know it. And we're going to get to that in a second, because our government does that, or every government actually. So it's all in your mind. This little picture here is a picture I put together. I won't go over all of it. But here, your brainstem, your pons, is the devil. Ganesh, if you actually turn your brain a certain way from underneath, it is an exact representation of Ganesh, complete with ears, trunks. The trunks are the trigeminal nerve that come out. It's amazing. And then the spinal cord itself is the trunk of Ganesh. And you know, the devil always had a particularly interesting tail, right? It always ended with a strong triangle shape, right? Like a point. It didn't just end like, say, a lizard's tail. It had a sharp point on it. Well, that sharp point is actually your sacrum. So the devil, when the devil's in control of you, your lower reptilian brain is what that represents. Remember, the devil is also represented in the Bible as a snake. That's a reptile. And that snake goes all the way down to your sacrum and controls your kundalini. When the devil is in charge of your lower brain, or your lower brain is in charge of you, let's put it that way, because the devil is inside of you. We may create devilish things outside of us, but it originates from within us. So when the devil part of our brain, the reptilian brain, rules over us, it controls all our senses. And you know that the devil always carried a triton, right? A three-pronged pitchfork. What's really interesting is if you carry out Ganesha's trunk, you get the trigeminal nerve that comes out and goes into the teeth, the nose, and the eyes. Most of the senses, right? And then it also has a little branch up here that goes up over the third eye. When the devil is in charge of your brain, for the majority part, then it actually controls your senses. It cuts off the third eye, and you're stuck in this lower part of your brain. We are being asked to evolve to the next point where we move up into the limbic brain, which is also known as the bird brain, which is super interesting because Ra, the sun god, was depicted as a bird. And Ra, you see these little thalamuses in the center of the brain. If you look at the segmentation, they look like beetles, which is funny, interesting, that the beetle was very popularly focused on in Egypt. This part of the brain is the thalamus, and in astrology, it's the part of your brain that relates to the sun. And it's so awesome to me that the sun god Ra literally represents, and the sun god Ra has a bird head, represents your bird brain. And once you get inside there and you illuminate higher than the reptilian brain, this is when you start to really turn things on. I couldn't draw this bone really good, but this right here, you can see my little pointing, this is the sphenoid bone, which is in actuality is the Ark of the Covenant, and we're going to go over that in a second. It's literally the Ark of the Covenant. And the pituitary gland, which controls all your hormones, chemicals in the body, rest within the sphenoid bone. So this little structure here, the pituitary gland, is actually the tablets that the Ten Commandments, which are Ten Commandments are actually chemicals, rule over your body. So if somebody knows how to control these commandments and control what you project into your body, they can control you. There's so much more to go over here, but like the eye of Horus, the eye of Horus, yeah, I said that right. It's actually, I don't have it in this picture, you can see it as well, but the eye of Horus actually goes over the ventricles in the brain. And the ventricles are another cool part of the brain that are filled with spinal fluid. And it just goes on and on. It's amazing. Everything is within us. It's amazing. Okay, I'll go on. So the ark, and you heard about electricity arcs of the covenant. And look at the first part of this word here, coven. Coven is where a group of people, typically it was always looked at as witches or warlocks or whatever. Coven would get together and practice magical rites to control certain things, call on the elements, and control reality. And that's fine and dandy as long as you're part of the ones that are doing, you're a consenting part of those rituals and those acts. But if you're not a consenting part, then you are the controlled part, and we're going to get to that in a second. The Ark of the Covenant is a chest described in the book of Exodus, and the book of Exodus was all about leaving captivity. And this is what we're in the stage of doing right now. We're in the stage of escaping our reptilian brain and exodusing that part that controls us. You could call that even the Pharaoh, and moving up into the higher brain. We're at the crest of joining or moving into the next step of our evolution. We're on the cusp of that. So the book of Exodus, as in leaving captivity, that contains the tablets of stone, which we're going to look at in a second, which are the two-lobed pituitary gland on which the Ten Commandments, and the Ten Commandments are actually hormones, chemical directions to your body. So the Ten Commandments are also within the Ark of the Covenant. Aaron's rod, and Aaron's rod represents Kundalini, and it's the medical staff. In biblical terms, Moses threw the Aaron's rod down, and it became a snake. Snake is Kundalini, and the medical staff, where you see the snakes twisting and twining up the middle, and then you have the two wings on top. That actually represents the endocrine system, the chakra system, and the wings at the top are actually the corpus callosum that connect the left and right brain. In Moses, interesting thing about Moses is his name literally means to bring out of water. So Moses traveled to the top of the mountain, gathered the Ten Commandments, and brought them down to the physical world where they were worshiping the golden calf that has 4 legs, and the cow always represents the physical world. So if we use that in metaphysical terms, our water, our blood goes up to the top of our mountain, which is the pituitary pineal gland area, gathers instructions and brings it down to the rest of the body. It's amazing how those stories, to me, correlate to actually physical happenings within the body. There's also a jar of manna within the Ark of the Covenant, and manna was when Moses gathered the Israelites, and what's interesting about Israelites is Ra, remember the sun god, Israelites. Ra is in the middle of Israelites. When Moses came and got the Israelites from the Pharaoh and they escaped, most of y'all know the story, they went through the Red Sea and the water closed, and then they were made to wander in the desert for 40 years. And while they were wandering through there, God provided them with food, and it was manna. Well, manna actually is referring to mushrooms, and mannitol is a substance in mushrooms that makes them medicinal. The more mannitol or mannitose within a mushroom, the more medicinal they are. Also, psychedelic mushrooms had manna in them too. And psychedelics actually blow your third eye way open. The only thing bad about psychedelics and drugs is it's uncontrollable. We are meant to open this and control this on our own. No outside help. In the beginning, maybe you probably play with that. That's up to you. But in the beginning, in the end, though, you want to be able to do it yourself and control that yourself. And then also within the Ark of the Covenant is the first Torah scroll. And I'm going to go over here shortly that the Torah relates to toroidal field. It's like a round field that surrounds us. Torah, as in a round, and dial. So the toroidal field is around us completely, like a donut field. And I'm always playing with words. And if you look at the toroidal, it's like round dial. And by getting in touch with our own toroidal field, we can dial in what we want to experience in the world and dial out what we don't. Torah, as in a round, and dial. So the toroidal field is around us completely, like a donut field. And I'm always playing with words. And if you look at the toroidal, it's like round dial. And by getting in touch with our own toroidal field, we can dial in what we want to experience in the world and dial out what we don't. So, to go on, God was said to have also communicated with Moses from between the two cherubim on the ark's cover. And the cool thing about that is the pituitary and pineal gland are what are in between those two cherubim, or the wings within your head. So again, it tells you right there that that's how we communicate with God, through our pineal pituitary gland. So where is the Ark of the Covenant? And I've already told you, it's in your head. So this is from 1 Kings 6:27, and it basically describes, I'm not going to read all this here, you can read it on your own. Basically it describes how the Ark of the Covenant was to be built. There is these two cherubim on top of a golden case, and they covered it in gold, and they faced each other, and it's very specific about how the angels fit on there. For example, it said, and their wings touched one another in the midst of the house. So they have the cherubim are on top of the ark. Two of their wings touch in the center, and then the other two wings touch the outer walls. And if you go by the different directions or the measurements related to how big the room was almost 30 feet wide, which means that Ark of the Covenant had to be that wide if it touched the outside wall. So did they make a mistake on the measurement, or were they trying to hide the truth of what the Ark of the Covenant really was? And so let's scroll on down and I'll show you. The real Ark of the Covenant is the sphenoid bone in your skull. This is actually a picture of the sphenoid bone. And look what the landmarks they call this. Look at these two little wings here. They call them lesser wings. That's amazing to me because there's supposed to be wings atop the Ark of the Covenant. And then you have the greater wings on the outside. So, from a perspective, these greater wings actually touch the outside wall of your skull, and then the inside wings touch each other. This is actually scriptural. It says that. So here we have the outside wings touching the walls of the skull, and the inside wings touch each other. That's very awesome because there's another confirmation that we're on the right track. And it also says that the cherubim were made of one piece, and this bone is one piece. Notice here with this picture of the owl, when I was playing with this, I heard that the sphenoid was called or nicknamed the butterfly bone. But when I was looking at it, I was like, that totally looks like an owl. It looks, you have the eyes, you have the beak coming down, and you have the horn. So a horned owl, to me, that's totally a horned owl, even with its wings outstretched and it's got its talons. So just to read from here to make sure I don't miss anything. Notice that it has wings, the greater wing that spread out and touch the walls of the skull, and the lesser wings that touch in the middle. It also looks an awful lot like an owl, which is the symbol that secret societies like to use. And there's no accident. They know this truth, and it's been hidden from us. You know, everybody was talking about the secret about law of attraction. Well, there's actually deeper secrets we need to know. The law of attraction cannot be actualized until you know the deeper secrets of how things work. And that's what I'm sharing with you now. The secret's only going to get you so far unless you know how to utilize it. And how to utilize it is by using the Ark of the Covenant and all the structures associated with it, rising out of your reptilian devil mind and into the higher part. They are actually stating that they got you by the third eye. So when they use this symbol, and secret societies use the secret symbol of the owl, they're kind of in your face saying, you know, we control you. We control your thoughts, the chemicals that are released in your body, everything. And most people don't know that because it's just not known. And then what's really interesting is a lot of movies and things related to owls have been coming out this year. I forget the name of that movie, but it was 3D. It was all about the owls, and the leader owl had this helmet on, and there was a female bad owl, and all the owls were on thrones, or the bad people were. So again, it's showing an owl on a throne, and I don't think that's by accident. So when they're controlling your Ark of the Covenant, which is actually your third eye, which rests in there, you cannot see the truth. You're being deceived, and through deception, your hormones and the chemicals that control your body are manipulated, plain and simple. So the sphenoid, you can see here just where it rests. It's associated with the eyes, the smell senses, also the sinuses related to the teeth where they come down. And it shows here the greater wings of the sphenoid. See how it touches the walls of the skull? That's just right on. That's too accurate to me. And here is how they describe the door entrance to the Ark of the Covenant. A double door made of olive wood was set in a place at the entrance of the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies is what housed the Ark of the Covenant. The top of the doorway was a pointed arch. Well, look at this. This is the bony structure related to your nose. The nose has two openings in it, and it comes to a point. That's no accident, because right here you go through that, and you're right there at the Ark. So now I'm going to play a little video that's going to show you a little bit more about the landmarks of the sphenoid.
The human skull is made up of 8 cranial bones that surround and protect the brain, and 14 facial bones that form the underlying structure of the face and support for the teeth. With the exception of the mandible, the bones of the skull articulate with each other through joints known as sutures. Throughout the skull, holes known as foramina serve as passageways for blood vessels and nerves. Bones on the surface of the skull encase the brain, protect sensory organs, and serve as attachment sites for the muscles of the head and neck. These bones include the occipital bone, parietal bones, temporal bones, and the frontal bone, as well as the nasal bones, the zygomatic bones, the maxilla, and the mandible. Other bones become more visible only when looking inside the skull.
So you can see right here what a very important, or how the sphenoid fits in a very important part of the skull. It's in the very center. So you take away all the bones, and here you have this owl-looking shape sitting right there looking at you.
Sphenoid bone makes up the anterior base of the cranium. It is a butterfly-shaped bone with a central body and 2 pair of laterally projecting wings. These wings form portions of the orbit.
So I'll pause this here so you can see. From the side, the pituitary gland rests right inside of here, and this bone is almost square in the back, which would be what the Ark of the Covenant would be. The bottom part of the Ark is always shown as being like a box, right? Well, the bone even looks like a box from the top view. And the pituitary sits, boom, right inside the box where the 2 winged creatures are. That's it. That is the Ark of the Covenant. The outside external, there might have been an outside external representation made, but it was made to represent what's inside of us. And we've lost the truth of that. And now it's time to reclaim it.
The body of the sphenoid features a depression known as the sella turcica, which houses the pituitary gland. Located between the orbits, the ethmoid bone makes up a portion.
I'm going to stop it there because it goes on to describe some things, but that's what I wanted to show you. And now next one I'm going to show you is how when you breathe, your skull bones are not stuck together. They're sutured, and they're sutured so that if you get struck in the head or you fall on your head, you won't crack your skull. These sutures will move. If your head was solid like a coconut, one little hard hit and your head would crack, and it'd be really dangerous. So there's a higher order to everything, and the body is made with high intelligence, and we have sutures there to make room for expansion and contraction and movement. So when we breathe, since our sinuses are inside our skull, they're like little balloons, our skull actually moves slightly. It moves ever so slightly. It doesn't move too much because we'd see that. But the expansion allows those sutures and the sphenoid bone to move. And the next video I'm going to show you is you had to look really close. It's going to show you how the sphenoid bone moves when you breathe. And the cool thing to me is it looks just like an owl in flight. It's ever so slight, but you can see the movement of the wings flapping and everything. See, it's expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting, just like an owl would be through flight. So that's pretty cool to me. Enough of that. The owl mystically is also associated with being able to see in the dark. And from my shamanic study, one of my favorite interpretations of shaman is one who sees in the dark. So once you start to wake up to the deception of what's happened to us, you begin to see in the dark. You begin to illuminate the darkness and the ignorance of the people around you, but first you have to illuminate that within yourself. Here is, at the bottom here at this page, is an ivory plaque from the palace of King Ahab, and it's in 870 BC, and it's two winged cherubs or angels around a object in the center that looks either dyed or like the pine cone, which the pine cone, what we call the pineal is it looks like a pine cone. So again, here we have this old representation, very old plaque representing that part of the brain. Again, just awesome to me. So let's go over the pituitary gland a little. The pituitary gland is the two tablets that the Ten Commandments or the hormones are written upon. You can see here that there's an anterior and a posterior part of the pituitary gland. This little speckled structure here you see is actually the sphenoid bone. This is resting in the sphenoid bone. And the hypothalamus, which is in charge of turning nerve signals into chemicals, gives signals to the pituitary, which then gives signals to the other endocrines. And that's really significant because every endocrine is associated with a chakra. So if you can control someone's endocrine system, you can control their chakra system, whether it's open or closed. And if you want to become self-empowered, it's ideal that you actually take control of your own chakra system, your own emotions, and your own chemicals. That's the path of empowerment. You take it on yourself. Here you see a side view. You see right where the pituitary falls below, the hypothalamus just below it, and it's right behind the eye. So that's why it's associated with the third eye. Notice here, this is supposed to be the Ark of the Covenant, and you have a little preacher guy before offering incense and prayers. But look at his hat. I found lots of pictures, and these hats always look like mushrooms. And if you look at the pituitary, you turn it upside down, it looks like a mushroom. It has a very smooth shape like a mushroom. And it's known that psychedelics, shrooms, open up the pituitary gland. They open it up and you start seeing visuals and tracers and stuff like that. It's because you blow open the pituitary gland. Of course, to me, this is something you don't want to play with because it can throw you into illusion just as much as being misled by others. So some people usually come across practicing and playing with this a little bit, but if you stick with it too much, you can begin to deceive yourself and fall into your own illusion. So ideally, as you master the ability to release the hormones, they can open up your third eye without having to use an external drug that is uncontrollable. Moses, which means carrying in water, carries the commandments, the hormones, down from the top of the mountain to the rest of the endocrine system, to the chakra system. So here we have the correlation between the outside world, the input, our nerves, our nerve impulses are changed within the hypothalamus into chemical signals, and the chemical signals then control the endocrine system and our chakra system. Right there is the link between the physical world and the metaphysical world. If you can control that link, you can control anyone and everyone. And again here, just to show you from the side of the sphenoid bone, the pituitary sits right in that area perfectly. Hormones and the third eye. Your astrology chart is a map of how your brain works. So those of you that are into astrology or have studied it a little bit, ideally, to really get anything out of astrology, you have to study it pretty in-depth. Just doing that whole newspaper thing every day, the newspaper is going to be a generic reading. Even if you're a particular sign like a Capricorn, every Capricorn is slightly different because of the different, what they call aspects between the different planets. Not everybody's brain is set up the same way. But in old text related to Sanskrit and Indian type ancient text, the astrology chart tells you how your brain functions, because actually every planet is associated with a different part of your brain. Like the sun, I mentioned earlier, is associated with your thalamus. The moon is the hypothalamus. And the moon in your chart is associated with your emotions. So here in this little picture here, you have the hypothalamus, and just below it is the pituitary. Whatever emotions you feel, now we're getting into Bruce Lipton stuff and other people's, What the Bleep movie, that goes into pretty in-depth about the hypothalamus. If you can control your emotions, you control what's excreted to the rest of the body, which means you control your chakra system. So the moon is associated with the hypothalamus, and it controls the pituitary gland, which controls everything else. The hypothalamus equals the link between your nervous system and your endocrine system. So the hypothalamus says, hey, I'm in stress, so it releases the hormone to pituitary, which maybe releases it to the adrenals, and then you go through a whole stress response. So I'm going to go ahead and play you a little picture of, or a little video of how a stress response is played out in the.
The stress response. In stressful situations, the body switches on its autonomic nervous system and neurobiological processes in an attempt to maintain homeostasis. The body is prepared for its reaction to stress. In the brain, the hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary gland. The hypothalamus, stimulated by the sympathetic nervous system, releases the hormone corticotrophin-releasing factor, CRF. The CRF activates the pituitary gland to release the adrenocorticotrophic hormone, ACTH. This in turn alerts the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands are located on top of each kidney. The ACTH from the pituitary gland stimulates the adrenal cortex to release cortisol. At the same time, neurons in the hypothalamus signal the medulla to release epinephrine, adrenaline, and norepinephrine, noradrenaline. These hormones then push the body into hyperalertness.
Okay, that was just a quick demonstration of how that works. So, so it just shows you right there from your feelings, your emotions create an actual physical response, and that goes for everything, not just stress, happiness, joy. So if we turn on the TV and we allow ourselves to see these images where the media is giving us images sometimes on purpose, like all of a sudden it's the worst flu season ever and everybody gets sick just because their body is releasing the hormones to tell them to get sick. So don't let other people control you. It's time to start waking up and taking control of your own consciousness, your own third eye, releasing yourself from your own reptilian survival instinct methods. It's time to move ahead. The mastery, self-mastery, is taking control and choosing for yourself. And if you can't control, this is from the movie What the Bleep. I have a little clip here, but I'm going to skip that because the images on there are not that good. But basically it shows in this clip, I just recommend you watching What the Bleep. In the movie, they show that when you have a stress response or anything else, kind of like I showed you in that clip, the hypothalamus releases certain hormones. So you have a hormone or chemical related to everything. So you have a stress hormone, a happy hormone, a lust hormone. All these are released when you feel certain ways. So a feeling actually gets turned into a physical response. And that's what also leads to illness or health. When we release certain hormones. So we can begin to take control of that. And one of the lines I really like in the movie the best is, if you can't control your mental state, you must be addicted to it. And all of us are in different ways addicted to certain things, and we're definitely addicted to feeling certain ways. And we have to start breaking those addictions. And that's why I say the path to mastery, or the path with the masters on it, is lightly traveled, because a lot of people like to get into all the new age, tarot reading and studying and looking at things, but the real masters are the ones that are doing the nitty-gritty work, getting inside their heads, working to release all this bad programming and move on. And that's what we all must do. And there's plenty of time. You don't have to do it this life or any other life, but eventually you'll be pushed to do it. But the longer you prolong that, the longer you'll be in illusion. So with EFT and other forms of energy work, we are loosening the addiction. We're loosening the connection of these peptides and synapses of the nerves. We're loosening those connections so we can move forward. And when we loosen those connections, more possibilities are open to us. Because when we're thinking certain ways or experiencing reality a certain way, only releasing a certain range of hormones, we limit our possibilities. We limit what we can see in the world. We limit our third eye view. And ultimately, like this representation here, is the state of your ions, the energy state of yourself, is much like your car radio. So when you're born, automatically your parents, peers, preachers, teachers are already programming those little buttons on your car. When you get in your car and you push a button, how it's got a preset station? Right from birth, you're being pre-programmed. And then as you get older in life, those pre-programs play out and ruin your life to a certain degree. Sometimes you even create some of your own for self-defense. And that's okay when you're in that situation, but once you're grown up 15 years later and you're not in that environment, something about guarding your heart may actually then limit your life as you get older. Ideally, we've got to reprogram our own buttons by taking control of the master switch. That's the one where you actually dial in, back to the toroidal field, your energy field, dialing in what you want to experience and pre-programming your own buttons. You can't just let them run on their own. And this is where that term, somebody pushing your buttons, comes from. Because if you have a charge on something, and say the word chicken, like say I don't have a charge with anybody calling me a chicken. I mean, it seems kind of stupid to me, but somebody might have a real big charge with being called chicken. So that means that they have a button on it. So if somebody says chicken, it's like pushing that button, and they'll be on that station for days, weeks, God knows how long sometimes. And the idea is, once you find yourself being pushed, that button being pushed, you have to identify it and reprogram it. And there's lots of ways to do that. I like EFT, Body Talk, two of the main ones that I really like to do that. But we have to start taking control of our own master switch, and that master switch ultimately is the toroidal field, the round dial, our energy body, and we can start dialing in our own experiences of reality, what we really want. And everything you do, eat, watch, think, and hear is tuning you in and out of certain real estates or energy states. And this is really important. There's lots of foods out there like MSG, aspartame, lots of chemical additives to our food that literally, and I mean literally, change the expression of certain chemicals in your mind. A lot of autism spectrum, they tell these people not to eat certain foods. And it's really important. When you go out and eat a bunch of junk food, you are tuning yourself or leaving yourself open to be tuned to something that you may not want to be tuned to. It ultimately comes down to self-mastery, and self-mastery isn't something you can just wish. It involves all 7 chakras. So the root chakra has about doing, action. The second chakra is how you feel, your creativity. The third chakra is your willpower. Your heart is where you keep your heart's desire. Your words are your throat chakra. Your third eye is your visual, and your crown chakra is thought. All of those need to be tuned to what you want to have experience. When we let those vary, we don't get what we want. We don't tune in or dial in to exactly what we want. So self-mastery is a process, but we have to be aware of what's going on. I'm just trying to show out of all my searching, what's loosening my desire to seek anymore is now I see it. Now I see it as so simple, and I want other people to see it, so you can stop seeking and start working with what you need to be working with. Because seeking, a lot of people seek, but never really actualize anything at all. They can spend their whole life seeking. And if you do that, you're not embodying what you're meant to do, embodying the concept of spirituality. It's all like a mental game. And, it's fun to play, but you're never really getting anywhere. Another cool thing about the sphenoid bone is it's also called the butterfly-shaped bone. And this made me think of the movie Butterfly Effect. And Ashton Kutcher, who's in the movie, he's this kid that's born with the ability, like his father, to manipulate time and space. And it's exactly what we can do with our own sphenoid bone. And look at where they highlighted inside on the actual poster. It's right there where the sphenoid bone is. So again, I don't think that's an accident. It's like what I call a reflective from the collective. We all have a collective consciousness. And whatever book, movie, whatever you read and see, usually has some kind of reflective information from the collective in it. So here, whether it was meant to or not, conscious or unconscious, I'm seeing the message. I'm like reading the Matrix here and saying that here's this movie about the butterfly effect where this guy can alter reality through this butterfly effect, which is related to the sphenoid bone. Again, that's just cool to me how that reflects. I have a little movie clip here, but you can look at it on your own. It's a pretty intense movie. So, having said that, some people may not be into that, but it's an interesting movie. You'll get what I'm trying to say if you watch the movie. And I think it's on Netflix and Netflix anymore. Cool thing about Netflix, you can go on there and find just about anything, at least in pieces. And in the movie, since I'm not going to play the clip, I'm going to bring up one of the aspects in there that are really important. Is he's trying to go back and change things for other people, of course for himself, but for other people. And when we try to change reality based on other people, for one thing, we're taking away their free will. So just like I don't want anybody controlling my consciousness, I don't want to control anybody else's. And sometimes when we're trying to use like The Secret or the law of attraction, and we're trying to incorporate other people into what we want to create, sometimes that actually prevents it from happening. So ideally, you focus solely on what you want, with the highest good, love, your actions related to love, your thoughts related to love, your voice, and then by doing that, you will get what you want and desire. But don't try to make it so specific with certain people. Certain people may not be into that particular thing with you, and you got to let it be. So if you're trying to create it for other people, that's going to freeze you up. You got to create it for yourself. Tune into what you want and start creating for yourself, because you're meant to be a master creator and go on from here further and further and get stronger and stronger. That's what I believe. So ideally, you create for yourself. Think, when you create, it's not that you create in a negative way. You're being conscious of other people, so you're not enslaving or harming other people, but you're still creating for yourself. And think about it. Would you like somebody else creating for you? I personally wouldn't. So get in tune with what you want and focus on that. That means getting in tune with you means disconnecting from all the other distractions. There are so many distractions in the world. The world is about 99.9% distraction. You could be getting in touch with something deep, and all you got to do is turn on the TV, eat a Snickers bar, anything. Instantly you're distracted from who and what you are. You got to start getting in touch with that, going inward, whether that's through meditation, whatever practice you use. You've got to start getting in touch with yourself, and also taking the consciousness, the perception of being able to dial in what you want purposely. Here's an interesting thing where I'm bringing in about the owl. This little page here, it's called the Bohemian Grove, and Bohemian Grove is where very wealthy, elite people go in California. But look here, there's this 30 to 50 foot stone horned owl. Again, there's no accident that this stone horned owl is here, where all these people that with a lot of money, here we have Reagan here and Nixon at a meeting in the Bohemian Grove. Most of our presidents, President Bush, are a part of this Bohemian Grove. And basically it's about, here they're doing this ritual around this large owl. And it goes back to them knowing that they're controlling us through our third eye and our consciousness. Here is the Bohemian Club, logo, and you can see that it's a horned owl again. Bohemian Club. Actually, it should be Bohemian Coven. Here is a design for the Capitol. Look, it's a total owl. And here is a real-life picture, probably done in the 60s or 70s. It's an owl. So basically what they're using is cult and magic to go about and cast a spell over us and keep us controlled. And it's time to wake up to that. And you start taking control of your own consciousness. Now, if you start putting a bunch of negativity towards them, you're buying into it. You're buying into their fear and everything else. Simply focus on what you want to create and start focusing solely there, and take your consciousness off of what they're wanting you to experience. Start creating the world you want to experience, as individually and in groups collectively, focusing on higher principles where we're no longer shackled and chained. Now, I'm cool with doing ritualistic practices together as long as I'm involved in what's going on. But if there's a group of elite people out there that have their own agenda and doing their own magical cast upon the masses of the globe without our consent, I'm not cool with that. That takes away my free will, and we are on purpose born with free will. To me, it's idiotic for God to give us free will to have to give it away in the end. It just doesn't make sense. There's a lot more I could go on here, but I believe I'm going to stop. Yeah, I'm going to stop at this point and leave it here. That I want you to. This is what I want you to know: is that all the religious text, all the religious icons are within you. From the burning bush to the tree of life, it's all within you. Mostly those landmarks are inside your brain. And the awesome thing about that is it's telling you that you have infinite power within yourself. As long as you unshackle yourself from others, take off the blinders, wake up to what's going on, and start getting together with groups or individually, focusing on creating the world we want. We can't fight them. If you get fearful and you start pushing against them, all you do is you fight their system. Simply take your focus off of where our focus is being put on. Like say, oh, this is going to be the worst flu season ever. Well, you can change that consciousness just by simply focusing another direction. So individually and in groups, start focusing on the world you want to experience, where we are free, we are respectable of each other's ability to create and be free. And that's the world I'm focusing on creating. And the more we do that, the more we will begin to experience that in this realm. Until then, there's always going to be a sense of control. We are like I said, we are at the point of evolving past the devil reptilian brain. That's all the devil is the reptilian brain within inside us. And whenever we see these people in the governments and control situations, it just shows that's where they are. They're working in that reptilian brain. And it's just time to move beyond that. And the age that we're moving into, this Aquarian age, it's supposed to be happening around 2012, is where we're moving into a point where not one individual had knowledge or power, like Jesus or Buddha, but all people have equal power and knowledge. That's what we're moving into. And of course, the people that have power right now would like to keep it, because when everybody has power, everybody's equal. And the reptilian brain, it has to do with survival, and it tells us that if we're not better, hence the whole concept of, trying to please our way back into heaven by being good people, which is a silly concept anyway. If God created us, the love is already there. So these people are just stuck in the reptilian brain. You can't fight them at that level. You raise above, and the higher consciousness you get into, it totally obliterates the lower consciousness. So don't fight against it. Tune into what you want and keep tuning into it, keep tuning into it, keep tuning into it. No matter what you see, hear in the world, do it inside. And I tell you, I believe 100% that you will create what you want when you start doing this. Anytime, one of the key things Buddha gave us was the idea of being conscious and aware in each moment. The more conscious you are, you can catch yourself when you start to have fear or doubt. You've got to change that station and dial it back into what you want. Because if you let your fear or doubt go for days or weeks, you're tuning in to what you don't want to tune into. It's time to take control, not just let everything default like the little scan button on your radio in your car. You hit that button and this goes through all the stations. No, it's time to take control and pick what you want to create and do it. That's self-mastery, and it's time for us to start doing it. Okay, Hope I didn't sound too much on a preacher box, but I'm just trying to get some strong points across here. And why I do all that I do is I want people to be free, expressive, loving, empowered beings, the exact same thing that I want to be. So God bless y'all. Namaste, and good luck.